Hello, and thank you all so much for being here. I'm Mara McLoughlin, owner of IRL Social Skills, and it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sarah Bruce, who is giving us this presentation today. Dr. Bruce, would you like to introduce yourself further?
Sure. I'm Dr. Sarah Bruce. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in the Los Angeles area. I work at a group practice, Spectrum Psych LA, and I also am an attending psychologist in the UCLA Peers program, where I run young adult social skills groups. I provide individual and family psychotherapy and autism diagnostic assessment. And I have a specialization in the intersection of autistic and LGBTQIA plus identities.
Thank you. Excellent. And well, let's go ahead and get started. And just a note, any action in the chat is going to go to me and Dr. Bruce.
Okay. Yes. And if you see my eyes moving up, it's because I'm looking at you all and looking at the chat, but I am attending to you and excited that you're all here. So without further ado, I think it would be great for us to just go ahead and jump into the content. All right. So we're going to start today's workshop with a couple of disclaimers. So the first disclaimer is that we're going to try our best to use up-to-date and affirming language, and we intend no harm or offense by the words we use. The training today is intended to be affirming of all cultural identities, including LGBTQIA plus identities. So we will be speaking about identities, including neurodivergent identities and LGBTQIA plus identities in an affirming and positive way. This presentation is for educational purposes and should not be considered therapy or medical advice. And I want to just mention that sex can be an uncomfortable topic. People sometimes aren't used to talking about sex, hearing about sex. We're going to be using terminology that may make people feel a little bit uncomfortable, talking about different parts of the body and different sexual activities. And people can sometimes feel a little uncomfortable with that kind of language and this topic. So I recognize that it can sometimes bring up some of those anxious, nervous feelings or some kind of discomfort even in our bodies. But my goal today is to provide information to you all and try to model what it can look like to be able to talk about these topics in sort of a calm and affirming way. It does take practice, and I'm hopeful that you all can get to that place in your own lives at some point. So there's a lot more to learn about sex and consent and relationships than we could fit into this presentation. We only have 90 minutes today, 15 minutes of which is intended to be Q&A. So really we can barely scratch the surface of all of the information that we wish we could provide to you, but we hope that you'll use today's workshop as a starting point for lifelong learning and just starting to, sort of jump into this topic. Feel free also to put questions in the chat, questions in the Q&A. I think there's a Q&A button, and we will be answering those questions at the end in our last 15 minutes. Other things that we want you to know are, that we hope that you'll please be respectful in the Q&A and in the chat. We don't want any put downs or name calling. We hope that you'll be attentive when I'm talking or when other people are sharing during the Q&A. And although it can be tempting to sort of joke around in the chat or in the Q&A, we hope that you'll kind of keep your questions and comments more serious and on topic, because we're all here to learn today, and we want to just make space and safety for everyone who wants to learn. So we're going to start today's presentation with a brief overview of gender identity and sexual orientation. So I love the gender unicorn tool. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with it, but this is just a really nice way to depict different identities and and different attractions. And so this is the tool that I'm going to use today to explain these different topics. So we're going to start with gender identity. So gender identity means one's internalized or inside sense of gender, of who they are. There's many different ways to present or to have different identities that one can have. Some people identify as female or a woman or a girl. Some people identify as male, a male, man, or boy, and other people may identify as under other genders. And that can include genders like non-binary, which means, neither male nor female. It can include gender fluid, and so many other genders. I think I would need the whole 75 minutes to capture all of the different identities that I wish we could go over today. This is a whole workshop topic on its own. But what I love about this tool also is that, as you can see, the different lines here, we don't see just male or man on one side and female or girl or woman on the other side. We see multiple lines, multiple spectrums. So someone can have some aspects of them that feel like a girl and some aspects that feel like a boy. They might feel like a little bit of both. Some people feel like neither gender and they might identify as agender. So there's so many different ways to identify. And then we have gender expression, which is how we show our gender to other people. So that can include things like our hairstyle, our clothing, our pronouns, our name. These are different ways that we can show other people what our gender is. And some different ways of expressing gender can be feminine, masculine, or other, so a different way. Something interesting is that sometimes gender identity and gender expression don't necessarily align. So someone can identify as a girl, but have a masculine gender expression, or people can sort of express their gender as feminine sometimes, masculine other times, and it may not be the same at all times. So that's kind of the gender expression piece. Another interesting tidbit about gender expression is that it's very time-bound and culture-bound. So there have been times in the United States where men wore pink and men wore, their hair in these white powdered wigs in the kind of the late 1700s, or wore kind of powder or makeup on their face. And that these days we might associate makeup and long hair and the color pink with a feminine gender expression, whereas back in the 1700s, that was a masculine gender expression. So these things can shift over time and across contexts and cultures. So in Scottish culture, men wear kilts or skirts, but here in the United States, we don't see many men wearing kilts or skirts, and kind of stating that they're having a masculine gender expression. So these things can kind of depend on where you are and when you are. Sex assigned at birth is our next category. And this is the sex that a person is labeled as when they're born. So the doctor will look at that person's genitals, meaning their, penis or vagina or kind of whatever is externally presenting as their genitals, and will decide based on what they see whether that person should be referred to or assigned a female or a male. An important part of this is that a person is, when they're a little baby and they don't have speech, they don't get to advocate for themselves. They don't get to choose this. This is something that's just assigned to them by a medical professional. So this is what it might say on your birth certificate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what your gender is or what your gender identity is. You can also see this little purple dot is referring to something called intersex or other. So intersex means that someone's internal anatomy, meaning their hormones, their chromosomes, or their external anatomy, so their genitals, may not conform to what we would generally think of as typically male or female. So they might have internally an XY chromosome set, or externally they might have some genitalia that we would typically think of as male, like testicles, but they may also have genitals that appear what we would think of as female. So they might have a vagina and testicles, or a vagina and a penis. So And there are many, many people that are intersex. It's actually quite common. So this is a group that it's important to know about. Then we have physical attraction. So that's kind of who you want to be physical with or sexual with. And, you know, when you look at them, it kind of gives you butterflies or makes you feel kind of attracted or awake and alive inside your body. So some people are attracted to women. Some people are attracted to men. Some people are attracted to both. And some people are attracted to other genders. And some different examples of physical attraction identities can be gay, lesbian, heterosexual, pansexual, omnisexual. There's so many different categories that a person can identify as. And additionally, some people do not experience physical attraction, and those people might call themselves asexual. And that's also perfectly fine and perfectly normal to identify as asexual or ace. Next, we have our emotionally attracted to category. So these are people who are interested in being romantic with or being emotionally intimate with. And we have people that are attracted to women, people that are attracted to men, and people that are attracted to other genders. Again, kind of like the physical attraction category. And then we have people that are not attracted to, that don't experience emotional attraction. And those people may call themselves aromantic or aro. And again, that is completely normal and completely, that identity is, affirmed in this talk and, across the world as well. Another interesting piece of information is that sometimes the physical attraction and the emotional attraction don't always align. So some people may be physically attracted to, let's say, women, but emotionally attracted to men. And so these don't always line up. So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So, and if you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A for later. So gender identity exploration and sexual orientation exploration is a process that we all go through to try to figure out who we are. So there are various questions you can ask yourself to try to figure out what your identities are. So some examples are, what does gender mean to me? Am I interested in being sexually or romantically intimate with others? What gender identity or expression makes me feel happy and authentically myself? Who am I interested in being sexually or romantically intimate with? And this clip or this link at the bottom of the screen is to the Trevor Project's Coming Out Handbook, which is a wonderful resource for learning more about your own gender and kind of exploring and then thinking about different ways to come out or share your gender identity or sexual orientation with others. But something that's important to know is that your gender identity or sexual orientation is something that you get to explore and discover on your own. No one can make that, can tell you who you are or what you are. This is something that is personal to each person, that each person gets to explore and figure out for themselves. So now we're going to move into talking about relationships. So I've put some examples of a few different types of relationships here on this slide. And then I have also put 2 columns for sex and romantic. So this table captures general expectations. So there may be some specific circumstances in which there may be some differences in whether a relationship is sexual or romantic. But in general, when you hear about these different types of relationships, these are some of the expectations that may come along with those relationships. So the first category is platonic friendship. So this is what we think of as your friends or someone that you don't really experience a romantic relationship with and often don't experience a sexual relationship with. So this is kind of a friend, just a kind of run-of-the-mill friend that you have. Then we have romantic partner, boyfriend or girlfriend. And before we get into the next part, it's important to remember that some people have just one romantic partner, boyfriend or girlfriend, and some people have multiple romantic partners, boyfriends or girlfriends. So there's lots of different types of relationships. And we're not able to go through all of them in depth here, but I do want to recognize that some people may have multiple relationships simultaneously. So in a romantic relationship, there is an expectation that there's going to be a romantic element. However, not all romantic relationships include sex. Sometimes they do, which is why I put maybe. Sometimes romantic relationships include sex, and sometimes they don't. It depends on what the people who are involved in the relationship decide and work out together and what everyone's comfortable with. Next, we have a casual sex partner, or FWBs, or friends with benefits. In this type of relationship, there is an expectation of sex or physical activity or sexual activity together. And we're going to talk more in depth about what sex and sexual activity can look like and what it means. But in this relationship, there is an expectation that there will be sex, and there's usually an expectation that there is not going to be a romantic element to this type of relationship. And sometimes it can be tricky if someone in the relationship develops romantic feelings towards another person. So it's important to know that in these relationships, oftentimes, or most of the time, there is not an expected romantic element. And if there is there are romantic feelings that develop, that's something to kind of talk through with your partner and kind of figure out what to do. And it might not be helpful to continue with the relationship in this format of this friends with benefits kind of format. Next, let's talk about life partners or engaged or married. So people who are engaged or married there's generally an expected romantic element, although some marriages can take place for reasons other than romance or love, but generally there's an expectation of love. And there may or may not be sex involved. There are people who are married or engaged who do not engage in sex. And then again, in love, very similar to this married or engaged category, we do expect that there's a romantic element, that both people are in love with each other, not just one person in love with the other person. And there may or may not be a sexual element to this relationship. Some people are in love and they don't have sex. And as long as both members or all members of the relationship are in agreement on this, then that's, perfectly healthy and okay. All right, and now we're going to move into relationship health. And I recognize too that I'm talking really quickly and trying to cover as much as possible. So I apologize in advance. I get excited, and also we just have so much information to cover. But I think there will be a recording that can be sent out later if you feel like you missed anything. So I apologize for my speed that I'm going through all these slides. But let's get into relationship health. So we have 3 different categories of relationships. We have healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, and abusive relationships. So we're going to go through some different categories and how we can tell whether these relationships are healthy, unhealthy, or abusive. So the first category that we're going to look at is communication. So in healthy relationships, the expectation is that all of the people involved in the relationship will be communicating with each other. That means they'll be telling each other what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what they want in the relationship. And they may want to share other things, communicate other things to their partners, like different interests that they have or different things they want to do. But the expectation is that when you're in a relationship that's healthy, both or all people in the relationship are communicating with each other and talking through these things. An unhealthy relationship is one in which one or multiple people are not communicating with each other. So people are keeping their preferences, people are keeping all their thoughts or most of their thoughts and their feelings to themselves, and not sharing those with the other people involved in the relationship. And that can create sort of an unhealthy dynamic. And then in an abusive relationship, an abusive meaning that people are getting hurt, so either emotionally or physically hurt in this relationship, we see that people can communicate in a hurtful or threatening way. So they can sort of be putting other people down or threatening them and saying, you know, if you don't do this or that, I'm going to leave, and kind of making those kind of statements. And then you can see in parentheses here, I put the word stonewall. Can anybody in the chat, does anyone know what that word means, stonewalling?
Yeah. Not talking to the person.
Right. So giving them the cold shoulder, refusing to talk through different issues. Yes. And I saw someone in the chat wrote not sharing their truth. Right. So you're sort of icing the other person out or sort of ignoring them and not talking through things. So that can be kind of an abusive pattern if it continues on as a pattern over time. So quick question for those. I can see a few of you have your cameras on, but I'll get a kind of a thumbs up or thumbs down from those who have their cameras on. Does a healthy relationship, a communicating relationship, mean that you tell your partner every single thought that comes into your head? All right, I'm seeing some thumbs down, couple of thumbs down here. Yep, thumbs down, mostly thumbs down, yes. Right, we don't have to tell our partner every single thought that comes into our head, but we want to share with our partner, especially thoughts that pertain to the relationship or that are about the relationship or how we're feeling in the relationship. But we don't need to tell our partner like that we want to pick our nose or something like that, you know, like that could be something that you can keep private or something.
Is there something else I can help with?
Sorry, my watch is talking to me. That's creepy. All right. All right, I am going to move to the next category, which is about trust and honesty. So in a healthy relationship, we expect that the people in the relationship are generally going to be honest with each other. So they're going to tell each other the truth, and they're also going to trust each other. So they're going to, you know, trust that the other person has their back, and things like that. If there's kind of, you know, a caveat to this. If you've been in relationships where you've been hurt before, sometimes it can be hard for you to trust the other person. And that's something that you may need to kind of work out with a therapist or on your own so you can get to a place where you can trust your partner, or partners. But in general, we want, you know, our relationships to be honest and trusting. An unhealthy relationship is one where the people in the relationship are being mostly dishonest, so mostly lying or often lying about big things in the relationship, or not trusting the other person very much. And then an abusive relationship, someone who is not being truthful, is lying, may deny that they're lying, and kind of try to what we call gaslight the other person. And gaslighting means kind of trying to convince someone else that what they're experiencing or what they're observing is not true and not real, and that they're, you know, silly or kind of crazy for even thinking what is real. So that can be kind of an abusive pattern. Also, if there's a series of accusations about the other person cheating on or being unfaithful to that person, that can sort of indicate, if that's happening over and over again, that could be an abusive pattern. So thumbs up or thumbs down to those that have their cameras on. Do you think that people ever lie or not tell the full truth in a relationship? I see some thumbs up. Yeah, mostly thumbs up. Yeah, sometimes people may not be what we call brutally honest and tell everyone things that could, you know, seriously hurt their feelings, in order to protect their feelings, or they might, you know, not tell the full truth about a very small thing, you know, like the way someone looks in their outfit. If your partner says, "How do I look in this outfit?" you might not want to say, especially early on in your relationship, "That outfit looks horrible and hideous and you look ugly." You kind of want to, you know, maybe later in the relationship, you might be able to be a little more honest about some of those things. But the important thing is that it's a pattern of honesty and trust, general honesty and trust, especially about big things, and important things and about the relationship. So next is respect and physical respect. So in a healthy relationship, both people in the relationship are respecting each other's bodies. They are asking for consent or permission to touch each other, and just kind of respecting that the other person can make choices about their body. And we're going to talk more about that later. An unhealthy relationship can be physically pressuring, meaning that one or both of the people in the relationship are trying to pressure or push other people in the relationship to do things that they're not comfortable doing with their bodies. So trying to kind of force or push them to do things they're not comfortable doing. Next, there is the abusive category, which is physically harmful or forcing. So if someone is hurting you, or if you're hurting someone else, hitting, kicking, shoving, pushing, pinching, I mean, any of those things, that could be what we call physical abuse. And that can actually, that's against the law and can get you in pretty big trouble. And that's also a pattern that, can be pretty unsafe for people involved in that pattern. Again, if somebody is forcing you to do something that you do not feel comfortable doing, aren't ready to do, that's also abusive. If they're pushing you to do things you're not ready or comfortable to do. In relationships, healthy relationships are mostly equal. So both or all of the people involved are having some say in the decisions that are made about the relationships and how much power each of them has in the relationship and who has control of things. But thumbs up or thumbs down, do we think that in relationships, everything is exactly 50-50, always fair? I'm seeing thumbs down mostly, yeah. Yeah, not so much, right? It's not always going to be exactly fair. Sometimes one person might need a little more care than another person if they're sick, or might need a little bit more, help with certain things. But so it's not always going to be 100% fair, or exactly 50-50, but we think in a healthy relationship, it'll be mostly equal. So it won't be, hugely unequal with one person having all the power or all the care and the other person having very little. That's what we would see in an unhealthy relationship, that unequal relationship. And then abusive is when when it's mostly one-sided. One person is getting all of the care, all of the attention, and is making all of the decisions where the other person does not get care or get to make decisions. And that can be an abusive pattern. And also if there's a significant power differential, meaning that's kind of a bunch of words that basically just means that one person has a lot of power control over the other person. That's a dynamic that can be abusive. And we're going to talk more about that later as well. In terms of engagement with your partner and others, so engagement meaning interaction, not wedding engagement or marriage engagement. We're talking about interaction. In a healthy relationship, we expect that the partners involved in the relationship will have interaction with their partner and with other people outside of the relationship, which could be friends, family, coworkers, classmates, people outside the relationship, and people inside the relationship. In an unhealthy relationship, you may see that partners are either not really interacting with each other, or they may not be interacting with other people outside of the relationship. They may not really be talking to people they used to talk to a lot, like family or friends. And in an abusive relationship, we see a pattern of isolation from other people, meaning that one or more partners are keeping the other people from talking to people outside the relationship. So they're saying you can't talk to your family, you can't trust them, I'm the only person you need, things like that. But that can be kind of an abusive pattern. So we want to look out for that. And then we want our partner to be accepting, meaning that they accept us for who we are, and for our interests and what we bring to the relationship. An unhealthy pattern is sort of a pattern of rejection or kind of not accepting us for who we are and different aspects of us, or being ashamed of us, or embarrassed by who we are and things like that. And in an abusive relationship, that pattern can turn to degrading. So actually putting some other people in the relationship down for who they are, and their interests and how they act. But thumbs up, thumbs down. Would somebody asking you to change a minor behavior, like moving your shoes out of the middle of the bedroom, be considered rejecting or degrading? I know that was a long question. I see thumbs down, right? So that's right. So in relationships, sometimes the people involved in the relationship might have preferences and ask other people involved in the relationship to, kind of maybe pull their weight a little more or change some minor things. Like for my partner and me, it was always that my purse and my shoes were in the middle of the room. And I had to recognize that because we're both, in the same space, I needed to, move my stuff to be respectful of my partner. So it's kind of a difference of like, is the other person rejecting who we are, or they're just asking us to maybe make some adjustments to what we're doing to be respectful of them. All right, so let's move on. So we're going to talk about some online warning signs. So this is, in today's world, people are constantly communicating online. So through text, over in DMs or direct messages on social media. There's, constant online communication going on. And there's some patterns that can be sort of a warning sign that we might be getting into some trouble or kind of an unhealthy communication pattern. So I'm going to go over a few of these, and feel free to look more into these, on your own afterwards. We don't have time to go deep into all of these, but I'll give you a few examples. So ghosting is, well, actually, can anyone put in the chat what ghosting means? What does ghosting mean? All right, I'm seeing in the chat, not responding to messages, falling off the face of the earth. Yeah, it's kind of like it's somebody you're talking to just kind of disappears without a trace. They have given you no warning that they're leaving your life, and they just disappear and don't respond anymore. And that can be extremely painful when that happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to most people I know. They've had someone not respond to their messages, and it hurts a lot. So we don't want to do that to other people. And we also, if people are doing that to us, that might be a sign of an unhealthy relationship. Caspering is pretty similar. That is when people, will write back after a few days after someone sends them a message, or they'll just write back like one word after 3 days or something. They're just giving the bare minimum of communication. That's what we call caspering. It's sort of like friendly. They call it that because it's like friendly ghosting. They haven't completely dropped out of your life, but they are trying to remove themselves from your life. Haunting is when you have you've discontinued communicating with someone. You maybe have broken up with them, or you're no longer friends, and that person is still on your social media, still liking your posts, and kind of following you on social media and looking at your pictures. And that can be kind of creepy. It's like they're like a zombie come back to life. They're haunting you. And that's why we call that pattern haunting. Then there's love bombing, which is when someone you don't know very well sends you very, very intense messages of love. So, maybe you've only known them for a day or two, and they're already telling you, I love you so much. I can't live without you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. But this is someone you don't know very well. And they might even send you gifts or presents or money or things like that. And they're sending you hundreds of messages a day. This is what we call love bombing. And it usually happens pretty early on in a relationship. And sometimes after love bombing, you might see that someone is asking you for favors or asking you for money, or things in response. So they're trying to make you feel safe and loved and comfortable so they can ask you for something later. But thumbs up or thumbs down, if someone love bombs us, should we send them gifts or money? right away? No, thumbs down. Yeah, we have to really know someone well before we send them gifts or money. So really want to be on the lookout for that one. Benching cushioning is when people sort of keep us on the bench or on the back burner in case their current relationship doesn't work out. So they have someone they can go to later, and kind of keeping you on the back. And slow fading is when people are sort of are not really engaged in the relationship anymore, but they are not really strong enough or brave enough to actually end the relationship. So they sort of maybe might say some kind of rude things or not really be responding to messages in the hopes that the other person will end the relationship instead, so they don't have to do it. And that also can be really painful. And so, we hope that if you're in a healthy relationship, that person is going to respect you enough that if they're not interested anymore, they will end the relationship. Then there's kitten fishing or catfishing. So catfishing is when someone pretends to be a different person, is impersonating someone else and reaches out to you and pretends to be someone else. Whereas kitten fishing is when someone heavily edits their photos, or they may send or post photos of themselves when they're much younger than they currently are, to kind of trick the other person into having feelings for someone that's not that's not how they look, or that's not really real. So these are some patterns to look out for. I'm going to briefly go over some dating safety tips. So if you do end up going on dates with someone, you do have a healthy relationship with them, you like each other, here's some different tips to follow. If you've only talked online, make sure you video chat with the other person before you meet with them in person. And in the chat, why is it a good idea to video chat someone if you've never met them before you meet them in person and you've only talked on text messages or only talked in text? Why do we want to do that? All right, I'm seeing someone saying to make sure they are who they say they are, right? Like, we don't want to get catfished, right? We want to make sure the person is who they say they are. We want you to let your friends and family know where you are and who you're with, and check in with your friends and family before and after the date. Make sure you have your own transportation. So especially if you don't know someone well, you want to have your own car that you're driving, or have someone you trust drive you, or use a rideshare app like Lyft or Uber or something like that. Meet your date in a public place. So meeting in, not at their house, but in, at a cafe or a restaurant. And don't go anywhere alone with your date at first. We want to definitely wait until you know them well before you go someplace alone with them. All right, we're going to go over public versus private activities now. So there's certain activities that are appropriate to do in public, and certain activities that are appropriate to do in private. So in public, those are places like, your school, your office, a grocery store, a park. Things that are okay to do in those kind of environments are things like holding hands or a short kiss on the cheek. So in those environments, we want to make sure we're fully clothed, and that we're, doing certain, activities that are, appropriate for those environments. And then we have sort of these mid-levels, semi-public and semi-private. And then we have private, which we're going to kind of go more into the public and the private today. So private are things like, are places like your bedroom or your home bathroom, and things that are appropriate to do in private that are not appropriate to do in public are things like sexual activity, which we're about to go into in a second, masturbation, which is sexual activity with yourself, which we're going to talk about more in a minute, and then personal hygiene. So being naked or undressed, flossing your teeth, showering, things like that. It can be helpful if you have someone that you trust, that you can talk to maybe make a list of different activities that you do, and try to figure out whether those activities should be done in a private, semi-private, semi-public, or public space. And see, and maybe compare notes with the person that you're doing this activity with and see if you both agree, or listing some different places that might be associated with private, semi-private, semi-public, and public spaces. All right, so now we are getting into the juicy part of our sex ed talk, which is, what is sex? We're going to talk about sex now. So sex is a way to experience and express pleasure and physical intimacy with yourself and others. So that pleasure and physical intimacy basically is a way of saying being close to someone. And the pleasure piece really shows that having sex with someone can feel really good and be really enjoyable when it's with someone that we trust and someone we care about a lot. So that is, that sex can be fun. Sex can be really, really enjoyable. What sex isn't is doing something that you're uncomfortable with in order to make someone else feel good. So everybody involved needs to be comfortable with what you're doing, and you should feel comfortable during sex. What sex is: normal, natural, and healthy. So it is completely healthy and normal. Most people on planet Earth do want to have sex, enjoy having sex. There are people that do not want to have sex, and that is also perfectly normal and healthy. But wanting to have sex is okay and very normal. And wanting to have sex doesn't mean that you should feel ashamed of yourself or wrong or perverted or things like that. It's pretty normal to want to have sex or be interested in sex or have sexual feelings. Sex is always consensual. That means that all partners involved have to say yes and want to do it. So we'll talk about different ways of saying yes and what that can mean in a little bit. What sex isn't is forced or coerced. People who are having sex should not be forced to do it at any time. It's something that everyone has to agree on. What sex is a choice. So I'm going to introduce this phrase that I hope you all will remember after our presentation today, which is your body, your choice. You get to choose what you want to do with your body and what kind of sexual activities you want to have. And so what sex isn't is a mandatory part of the relationship. So just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean you have to have sex. What sex is private. So we just talked about private and public. So sex is something you do in a private place, like your bedroom or your bathroom or your home if nobody else is, places in your home if nobody else is living at your home. And sex is not something we do in public. What sex is it can include one or more different activities. So there isn't just one way to have sex. There's lots of different ways to have sex. And those are all, as long as everyone is agreeing and comfortable, it's okay to have sex in lots of different ways. So some people think that sex is only what we call vaginal intercourse, so a penis going into a vagina, but actually it could be a lot of different activities. And we're going to talk more about some of those specific activities in a minute. So what sex is it's an activity for people of all genders and sexual orientations. So no matter, what your gender is, who you're physically or emotionally attracted to, you can have sex. And it's not just for people who are straight or cisgender, meaning that their gender identity matches their sex assigned at birth. Sex can be for everyone. All right, so let's talk about some different types of sexual activities. So the first one is masturbation. So masturbation also can be referred to as sex with yourself. And that's when you touch your own genitals. So your penis or vagina or or your breasts in a way that feels good to you. It's a way of exploring your body and figuring out what feels good and what you like. And it can be enjoyable. And this is something, again, that we do in a private place and not a public place. So in your bedroom with the door closed or in the bathroom with the door closed, but not in a public place. Then we have affectionate touching. So these are activities like hugging or holding hands or cuddling or massages, like rubbing someone's back or shoulders. These are ways of touching your partner or partners that feel nice and feel like you're close together. But these aren't necessarily sexual activities. And this is something you will want to talk to your partner or partners about where it's okay to hug, where it's okay to hold hands. And you still want to ask for your partner's permission or consent when you do affectionate touching as well. And we're going to talk more about consent soon. Then we have outer course, which is sexual touching without penetration. And penetration means that a penis or fingers or sex toys, so those are special tools for having sex. Penetration is when those things go inside a person's vagina or anus, which is the opening of their bottom or butt. So outer course means sexual activities or touching without anything going inside of the body, inside the vagina or the anus. So some examples of outer course are kissing. There's lots of different kinds of kissing. You can kiss someone on the cheek, on the mouth, with your lips closed, with your, or open mouth kissing or French kissing. So kind of, you would use your tongue a little bit, open your mouth a little bit. That's kind of that open mouth or French kissing. And there's making out, which is kissing, oftentimes accompanied by some, body touching or kind of rubbing of the back or shoulders of the other person or different parts of their body. Then there's sexual touching on the outside of the body. So touching another person's genitals, their penis, or the outside of their vagina. And that can also be called fondling, but not penetrating or going inside of the body. Then there's body rubbing, which can include things like tribadism and grinding. So this means that you are rubbing parts of your body, potentially your vagina, your penis, or your breasts, against other parts of another person's body, but you're not actually penetrating, or there's nothing going inside the vagina or anus. So this is what we call body rubbing. Then there's vaginal sex or intercourse, which is when a penis, fingers, or a sex toy is moved back and forth inside a vagina. And then and other words that can mean the same thing as vaginal sex and intercourse are things like doing it, or sleeping with someone. These are all words that you might hear that mean the same thing as vaginal intercourse or sex. Then there's, or going all the way is another one. Oral sex is when someone puts their mouth, uses their mouth or their tongue or their lips to stimulate another person's penis or vagina. And some other words you might hear that mean the same thing as oral sex can be things like blowjob, which is when a person puts their penis inside another person's mouth. And then things like you might hear someone say going down on someone else, which means when someone puts their mouth on another person's vagina. So there's lots of different slang terms for all of these things. And those are just a couple. And then there's anal sex or intercourse, which is when a penis, finger, or sex toy is moved back and forth inside an anus or the opening of the bottom or butt. All right, so now that we know what sexual activities are, we're going to talk about how to know when you're ready. So things that are important to remember or important to explore are things like your personal values. So your beliefs, your attitudes, and different ideas or thoughts about sex that matter for you. So some ideas of personal values might be, I want to wait until I get married to have sex, or I want to wait until I am in love with someone to have sex with them, or maybe those things don't matter to you, but that's something to explore. Then think about why you want to have sex. It's really great when you want to have sex in order to feel good or be close to someone. And what can be kind of problematic is feeling ready to have sex because you're trying to avoid something. So for example, someone might want to avoid feeling behind their peers. So maybe avoid being, what we call like a virgin. someone who's never had sex before, trying to avoid the discomfort of that feeling. So choosing to have sex to avoid feeling that way, or choosing to have sex to avoid our partner or partners leaving the relationship. So we really should, if we're ready for sex, it means we want to have sex and we want to feel pleasure and we want to be close to our partner. And then some other questions to think about are listed here. So things like, am I ready to handle the emotional risks associated with sex? Do I feel safe with my partner? Do we have protection against sexually transmitted infections and unwanted pregnancies? Are we both sober and able to communicate consent? And are we legally allowed to have sex? And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those things later on. So we're going to talk about what consent is. So I've used that word a couple of times today. Basically, consent is permission for someone to do something when it affects or involves another person. So giving and getting consent is an important part of respecting people's boundaries and respecting their bodies, and is important in all types of relationships. So I'm going to go over the FRIES acronym. I love this acronym. It came out of Planned Parenthood. So we're going to look at all the different aspects of consent. So FRIES, the F means freely given. So freely given means that we are giving our consent or saying that someone is allowed to do something to our body without any pressure from somebody else, or without someone telling us we have to or pressuring us. This is something we're saying, I want to have sex, and I'm not feeling pressured to do it by somebody else. Consent is also reversible. Reversible meaning that once you give consent, once you say, I want to do this particular activity, I want to have oral sex, I want to have, sexual intercourse, you can change your mind at any time. That means before you've engaged in the activity, during the activity, you can say at any time, I no longer want to do this activity. So you can always change your mind at any time. That's what reversible means. Informed means that everyone who's involved has the information they need to make a decision about whether they want to engage in an activity. So if someone, is saying, we are, can you, or do you want to have, do you want to have sexual intercourse? And I'll use protection, meaning I'll put a condom on my penis or things like that, then if the person does not use a condom, that's not giving them the full information that they need to provide consent for that activity and say, I want to do this. So you want to make sure that you're getting the full information and that you're giving the full information when you're looking for consent or asking about consent. Enthusiastic is the E in FRIES. It means that you actually want to do it. You're not kind of, or the other person wants to do it. They're not kind of saying like, I guess, or maybe, or feeling kind of pushed into it, or not really feeling excited about it. It means that the people who are engaging in the activity both want to do it, and they both express that they want to do it. And then specific means that each part of sexual activity is a specific activity, and you have to get consent or agreement for every part of it. So just because someone has consented or said, yes, they want to kiss you, does not mean that they also are consenting to have oral sex with you. You have to get consent or give consent for each part of the sexual activities. All right, we have some great videos here. You can find them. We don't have time to watch them, unfortunately, but Planned Parenthood has a fabulous series that you can find on YouTube of consent videos that you can watch that give you great examples of giving consent and what different situations.
Even though it may not.
So we're going to talk now about how to ask for consent. So asking for verbal consent, meaning for the other person to actually use their words and say that they want to do a sexual activity with you, that can sometimes feel awkward, but it clearly communicates what you want and is the easiest way to determine consent or if the other person wants to do that sexual activity with you. So some examples are written on this slide of ways to ask for consent. So you can say things like, is it okay to hold your hand? Or I would like to kiss you. Would you like that? Can I take your shirt off? Can I touch you there? Do you want to have sex? Do you want to have oral sex? So these are all ways that you can ask another person for consent. So these are just some examples. Next, when we're asking another person for consent, we are looking for verbal signs, meaning things they say that indicates that they are saying yes. So we're not just looking for them to, not pull away. We actually need them to say something to tell us that they are consenting and want to have sex or do certain activities. So some examples of verbal signs that indicate yes are, yes, I would like that. You can touch me there. Of course. Yep. Those are all ways that someone can say, yes, I consent to this activity. And then we can look for verbal and nonverbal signs that indicate no. So things people say and people do in order to say, no, I don't want to do this activity. So if someone is silent when you ask them and does not answer you when you say, would you like me to touch you there? Or when you ask for consent, that means no. If they say maybe, that means no. So they actually have to say yes, or some of the other examples here on this slide, in order to get that consent, in order for you to know it's okay to go forward with that activity. So some other things that you can look for that say no are things like not right now. And if someone says not right now, thumbs up or thumbs down, does that mean that we should ask them again 3 minutes from now? Thumbs down. I'm seeing thumbs down. Yeah, no, we need to wait longer, right? Yeah, thumbs down again. We need to wait longer to make sure that that person feels comfortable. So not right now really means no. And we need to wait until another day or another time, weeks later, and reevaluate before we ask again. If someone is moving your hand away or shaking their head or freezing or becoming tense, their muscles get tense, or they're looking around or they're crying, that also may mean no. So, and if the person says no, you can see here with this purple asterisk, if someone says no, it's important to respect their decision and stop, even if you feel angry, disappointed, or hurt. And I think that happens to everyone at some points in their life, is they maybe want to ask someone if they want to do a certain activity. Do you want to give me a hug? And if someone says no, it can really hurt our feelings. I've definitely had that happen. Or they'll say like, no, I'm not a hugger, or no, I don't want to do that. And it really hurts. But I have to respect what the other person is saying, because your body, your choice. So that means I get to choose what I do with my body, but the other person also gets to choose what they do with their body as well. So if someone asks you to do something that you're not comfortable with, you can say no, and you can and should say no. So some examples of how to say no to someone when they ask you to do an activity you're not comfortable with are no thanks, I'm not interested. I don't want to do that. I'm not ready for that, or not now. And you see, I put some asterisks here after these last two, because if you say these things, I'm not ready for that, or not now, and that indicates or shows the other person that you might want to do that activity later, and they may ask you again. So if you really don't want to do that activity, and you are not thinking that you're going to change your mind later on, it's best to stick with something a little more firm, like these first three examples here. So just know that if you say not now, you might get asked again later. You might have to say no again. All right, so one of the things that's important when we're having sex is to communicate with our partners. So different ways, so we need to tell our partner what things feel good, what things don't feel good, and then we need to ask our partner or partners also what feels good for them. And that can be important, because it's not, I'm not a mind reader, and none of us are mind readers. We can't tell what the other person likes and doesn't like unless we ask them. And that means the other person doesn't know what we like unless we tell them. So we have to be communicating during and before and after sex to tell, so that we're all on the same page about what feels good and what doesn't feel good. So here's some examples of how you can ask for and tell other people what you like, and communicate with them. So some examples would be, how does this feel? Or do you like this? Or how is this? That's ways to ask your partner or partners how they are feeling about what you're doing with them. And some things you could say are, if you like it, you could say that feels good, or I like that. And if you don't like it, you can say, no, I don't like that. Or you could give them even some instructions like, oh, can you move a little to the left? Or like, can you go a little bit faster or touch a little bit softer? You can help give them some instructions so they know how to touch your body in a way that feels good to you. So let's talk about in specifics, some different topics that might come up among neurodivergent teens, young adults, and people throughout their lifespan. So on the previous slide, you can see that I put asterisks next to sensory needs, communication needs, and emotional needs. So people who are neurodivergent may experience some discomfort around certain sensory aspects of sex. So sometimes there's certain sounds that come up during sex, or certain touches that come up during sex that feel uncomfortable to somebody. And as part of their experience as a neurodivergent person. So that's something that also needs to be communicated to a partner so they know. Communication needs can come up. Sometimes it can be harder to speak or use words when we're feeling overwhelmed. Or, maybe there are ways of communicating about sex that work better for neurodivergent people. And then there's emotional needs. For all of us, being involved in sex can be pretty intense and overwhelming emotionally. We're being very vulnerable with our partner, and we're engaging in things that might be new. And so for for neurodivergent individuals, that can be even more intense for them. So it's important to be able to communicate with our partners about all of these different areas, all of these different needs, so that we can make sure that we're getting our needs met. And also we can ask our partners if they have specific needs around sensory concerns like sounds or smells or touches, things like that, or different communication and emotional needs. So on this next slide, I've put some examples of ways that you can express these different needs to your partner or partners. So for example, that feeling of hair tickling my skin can be really distracting. Would you mind pulling your hair back when we're hooking up? Hooking up, again, is another slang term for making out or having sex or kissing, things like that. But in this case, someone gets, uncomfortable when someone's hair is just lightly touching their skin, and they're asking like, hey, can you please put your hair up? The sound of kissing makes me feel uncomfortable. Would it be okay if we kiss more quietly? Light touches make me feel a little on edge. Can you please use a firmer touch? So these are all ways that you can express sensory needs to somebody else. Then communication needs. I sometimes have trouble expressing myself verbally or in words when I'm overwhelmed, so it's helpful for me if we decide on a sign that means stop. How about if I tap 3 times on your back if I need to stop? So that way, someone who may have some difficulty using their words when they're feeling overwhelmed can come up with other strategies to communicate with your partner if you need to. Sometimes when I'm focusing on sex, it's hard for me to switch to a new position in the moment. Can we talk about what positions we want to try before we have sex? So in some of these different ways that we communicate needs to our partner, we may be wanting to communicate these before we're actually having sex, and so that we can talk through them before we're actually in the moment. Emotional needs. Sometimes during sex, I feel overwhelmed and need a break. If you feel me pull away, it means I need to sit nearby and take deep breaths for a few minutes. I really enjoy kissing you. Kissing in public makes me feel anxious. Would it be all right if we kiss in private instead? So these are different ways that you can express your emotional needs to your partner or partners. All right, so now we will talk about some legal considerations. So sex can be, as I mentioned, fun, enjoyable, but there's also rules that are involved in sex and certain behaviors that can get us in trouble if we are engaging in these behaviors. So we're going to talk a little bit about some things to look out for and some things to do and things not to do. So the first is, we already talked about consent, but there's actually some rules about consent that are important to know. So if someone is sleeping, unconscious, drunk, high, or can't make an informed decision, like for some reason they're just not thinking properly, they cannot provide consent. That means that having sex with that person is considered sexual assault or rape. So if someone has been drinking and they say yes, thumbs up or thumbs down. If someone is drinking and says yes, does that mean they've consented to have sex? I'm seeing thumbs down. Yeah, it's true that they have not consented because they are intoxicated or drunk. They can't make a decision about that because they're not thinking clearly. Whoops. All right. There's also no consent when it comes to sex with someone in a position of authority over you. So if if you're a student and your teacher asks you for consent, you can't give consent because that person is in a position of power over you. That kind of makes that part of consent, the freely given part of the phrase, freely given, means it can't be freely given. It means there's pressure already involved in the situation. If someone in authority is asking someone not in authority to have sex. So there's no consent. So boss, helper, or aide cannot, you can't consent to having sex with that person. And if you're someone else's boss or supervisor, they can't consent to having sex with you either. So that can get you in big trouble. If you or your partner have a legal guardian or conservator, there may be limitations on your or your partner's ability to provide consent. So if someone is an adult and has a legal conservator, they may not be able to provide their own consent for sexual activity. Their conservator or guardian may need to provide that consent. And I think that is on sort of a case-by-case basis. There are different kinds of guardianship or conservatorship, but it's something to ask your partner about if there's someone who may have a guardian or conservator, so that you don't make a mistake and ask for consent when they can't give you consent. All right. Age matters when it comes to consent. So there are laws that cover consent that are based on the age of the people involved in the sexual activity and the age difference between them. So in all 50 states of the United States, it is illegal for someone who is under the age of 18 to have sex with someone who is older than 18. That means if one of the people having sex is 19 and one of the people having sex is 17, that is illegal, not allowed. So if you're a minor under 18, you can't have sex with someone over 18. So that's something that's really important to know about. And then there's also laws and rules that cover the age difference between the people having sex. So in many states, and it kind of depends on a state by state basis. And I think I can give Mara a link to a resource where you can look up your state's particular laws around age and consent. But, like in certain states, I know in the state of California, a 14-year-old can't have sex with a 12-year-old. That is against the rules and has to be reported to Child Protective Services. So it's really important that you know the rules for sex in your area before you ask for consent, because you might not be able to give or get consent from the other person. Public indecency. So this basically means that sex and nudity or being naked in public places is illegal. So if you're going to engage in these activities, do so in private, those places like your bedroom or the bathroom at home, things like that. Stalking. So contacting, following, or approaching someone after they said they do not want you to is against the law. So that means if you've asked someone to have sex and they've turned you down, then, you don't keep asking them over and over again. Or that can be stalking, or following someone around who does not want you to or hasn't given you consent to follow them around. So following them, around school or to their house or things like that, those could be considered stalking. So make sure that you are communicating with people that you want to be close or intimate with, and get their consent before following them around or continuing to ask them to be in a relationship with you or consent. And similarly, if someone is following you or asking you continually to do things, that could be stalking and that could be against the law. All right, next we'll talk about child pornography, or CSAM is the newer term for that. So child sexual abuse material. So you might see that term being used now, and sexting. So it is illegal to view, download, or share images of minors, so anyone under the age of 18, partially or fully naked or engaging in sexual activities. So that means that if you are looking at pictures online, so this can be, more straightforward, like child pornography on the internet. If it's in your browser history, you can get arrested, you can go to jail, you can get in really big trouble with the law. You could be on a list of sex offenders. It's just really, really important that you are aware of kind of where you're clicking and what you're searching for on the internet, because you can get in really big trouble with these things. And I've seen it happen with people that I know and people I've worked with. It's just really, really devastating when this happens. And usually when it happens, the person is not interested in having sex with minors. They've just accidentally clicked on something that they're not supposed to be watching. So looking at, naked children under the age of 18 by accident can still get in trouble. Similarly, when we're talking about sexting, a lot of teens these days are kind of asking each other for nudes. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but naked pictures of themselves or provocative pictures of themselves, with their shirt off and their breasts showing, or naked pictures of them or pictures of them touching themselves. Even if you're a teenager, if you take a picture of yourself engaged or someone else engaged in one of those activities or partially naked, and you send it to someone else, you can be prosecuted by the law. You can go to juvenile hall. Your family can get in really big trouble. So if someone is asking you for pictures, for naked pictures, do not send them, even to another teen. It's against the law. And you can get in really big trouble. Similarly, if you're asking people for naked pictures, that could be seen as soliciting that type of material. And so really just want to avoid either sending or asking for any pictures of other minors on the internet. And if for some reason something pops up on your computer that is an image of a child engaged in some kind of sexual activity or partially or fully naked, you can report that. And I can give Mara the link to send out for the sort of the tip line for where to report that. And we recommend that you close that window and close your browser immediately and let someone know that that has happened. The other thing is that now in 2023, it has become illegal to download, view, or share anime images of naked depictions of naked children, minors engaging in sexual activity. So even illustrations or anime pictures of these activities can be considered child sexual abuse material. So if you have those materials, get rid of them and don't keep those. And finally, if you have been assaulted or raped, so someone has had sex with you or touched you or pressured you to have sex without your consent, you may want to report it to a trusted adult so that way that person isn't able to do that to other people or to you again. So that's an important legal consideration. And all this to say that I'm not sharing this information to scare you or frighten you and keep you from having sex. Sex can be, very enjoyable, pleasurable, like I've mentioned before. We just want you to be really careful about it and to be aware of what the rules and the laws are so that when you're engaging in it, you can relax and enjoy it. So that's why we're providing this information for you. All right. safer sex strategies. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get into this a ton. This could be a whole talk in itself. But there are consequences of having sex, like sexually transmitted infections. So things like gonorrhea or chlamydia, also HIV or herpes. Some of these things that are things that can be treated with antibiotics, and some infections can last for your whole life and cannot be gotten rid of. So that can happen, and also unplanned pregnancies can happen. So you can get pregnant, or if you are not engaging in safer sex. So we really want to, so there's certain examples of things that are examples of safer sex. So things like outer course, like we talked about. So ways of touching each other that do not involve any penetration or anything, any, genitals like a penis going inside of a vagina or an anus or things like that. Touching with clothes on, that can be a form of outer course. Abstinence means not having sex or engaging in sexual activities. That's a way to have safer sex. There's certain barriers, condoms, dental dams, and diaphragms that you can put on your genitals or inside of your vagina in order to keep you from getting pregnant. And some of these things prevent sexually transmitted infections, and some of them do not. So it's important to know, to talk to your doctor or someone, an adult you can trust, about which ones will work best for you. Then there's chemicals like spermicide that you can use and put on your genitals, or put on a condom, on the outside of a condom, which is one of the barriers. You can see it here in this picture, that can additionally help prevent pregnancy. And then there's birth control, which are pills, shots, patches, sponges, IUDs, which are in little intrauterine devices, which is like a little piece of plastic that can be put inside your vagina and up into your cervix, which is kind of higher up than your vagina, that can keep you from getting pregnant. There's a link on this slide to learn much more about birth control on the Planned Parenthood website. It's a great website, highly recommend, to learn a lot more detailed information about these different methods of safer sex. All right, who can I talk to if I have questions about sex? Some examples of people you can talk to are your therapist, a doctor, parents or trusted family members. If you have aunts and uncles or grandparents or older cousins or cousins your age or friends, who are knowledgeable about this stuff, those might be good people to talk to. So in the chat, I'd love to hear some different ideas for people that you feel comfortable talking to, or having, if you're a parent, having your kid talk to, some different ideas for people to talk to about sex if they have questions. I don't think we're going to have a chance to really go through these in depth, but I will quickly go through them. So we're going to do a little bit of true and false, and feel free to put your answers in the chat for the last question if you want to. So true or false, pornography, porn, and the media are good places to find accurate information about relationships and sex. The answer is false. Oftentimes porn or pornography and the media, so TV shows and movies, do not show accurate information about what sex actually looks like, or about what consent means and things like that. So these are often not good places to look if you want accurate information about sex. All right, not all romantic relationships include sex. True or false? The answer is true. You can be in a romantic relationship without sex too. All right, if I have questions about sex, I should keep them to myself. True or false? False. Find somebody that you trust that you can ask those questions to. Nobody has to date or have sex alone. There's people out there who can answer those questions for you. If someone says no, I should respect their decision. True or false? True. We should respect other people's decision. Your body, your choice, and other people should respect your decision as well. True or false? If someone I care about asks me to have sex, I have to say yes. Big false on this one. You do not have to say yes. You can always say no if you're not comfortable. All right, so that is the conclusion of the content of this talk in a super fast review. I wanted to share a few resources with you in case you are interested in learning more. One of my colleagues, Dr. Jamie Barstein, is running a sex ed workshop that's 14 weeks and goes into all these topics in much greater depth and like sort of an interactive group format. She's taking interested teens and young adults. She can start a teen group. She also has LGBTQIA plus inclusive content. So feel free to reach out to the email on this slide if you are interested. And then there's Peers. The UCLA Peers Clinic has a Peers dating boot camp, which talks more about kind of more of the logistical aspects around dating, like how to flirt and how to let someone know you like them, and provides tips in kind of a stepwise format that are easy to follow. Dating do's and don'ts and how to handle pressure. So some of the content from this talk came from that Peers curriculum. All right. And now we are opening for Q&A. Oh, someone has said, including anime, not a good place to learn about sex, unrealistic. Agreed. Anime is not an accurate depiction of sex and not a good way to learn about sex. So very true. Thank you so much for that. Any questions? Imagine you're probably all just sitting there like, oh my gosh, that was so much information. Is maybe, oh, okay, someone has asked, is maybe a yes or a no? So if you ask someone if they want to have sex or want to engage in a certain activity and they respond with maybe, that means no. So that is the same as someone saying no. So if someone says that, do not proceed with whatever activity you have asked about. Other questions? That's a good question. Why is it not possible to delete or remove all child porn from the internet? That is a great question. So the answer is that oftentimes once something is posted online, it is kind of lost into the ether, meaning that it can be screenshotted. So there are ways that people can save it onto their computer. It can go, once it's uploaded onto one website, it often gets uploaded onto many different websites from that one. And it's sort of like a whack-a-mole. I don't know if that's like too much of an old people reference, but basically, like once you quash the video on one website, it'll pop up on a different website. It can just float. Once it's up on the internet, it can sort of float all around, and it's very, very hard to delete or remove it. And I wish we had better ways or resources for removing that content, but at this time, it kind of just floats all around. It's very unfortunate. Okay, what if someone doesn't respect a boundary you set? That's a great question. So if someone doesn't respect a boundary you set, I would say if it's in the context of a relationship, that relationship might fall into one of those unhealthy or abusive patterns. And if you're in a relationship that's unhealthy or abusive, that may be a relationship that might be healthy to leave that relationship. And if you need help with that, asking a trusted adult for help, or trusted, colleague, if you are an adult, someone that you trust, to help you get out of that relationship, that can be really helpful. In terms of in the moment, if someone doesn't respect a boundary, what I would do is I would get out of there if you can. If someone is pressuring you, pushing you to do something you're not comfortable with, I would try my best to actually leave that situation. So if you're in somebody's bedroom, try to leave that bedroom, or, pretend you're getting a call and say, I have to step out, and actually leave that situation, because it can be dangerous if someone's pushing you and not respecting when you say no. So that would be my tips. You mentioned stalking. What is cyber stalking? So that's a really good question. Try to answer as many of these as I can. Cyber stalking is when someone is kind of following you around on the internet. So we talked about stalking in person, which is sort of like following somebody to work and then following them to their house. Whereas cyber stalking is somebody who's kind of like following you on social media, and sending you lots of messages. And then sometimes if you block that person, they might create a new profile and continue reaching out to you and continue bothering you and harassing you. So that is what is considered cyber stalking. And if you are being cyber stalked, it can be helpful, and it can be helpful if you haven't tried blocking that person to block them. And if that person comes back and still bothers you, then there are ways of, there are people you can contact. I'm forgetting the name of the role of the person. Maybe Mara, you can remember. There's like someone who is supposed to moderate content on social media sites.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just the webmaster, or no.
Something like that. Yeah, like a webmaster, or I'm just like totally spacing on the name right now, but there are people you can ask to for help. But yeah, it's a really tricky situation. And also you can take a break from social media for a while. And sometimes if you take a break from your profile or start a new profile, the person might lose interest or kind of lose touch. Although if they're savvy, they can probably follow you to your new profile. So that's a tough situation for anybody to be in, to be cyber stalked. Okay, if a good friend says no, if someone offers sex, will the friendship stay the same? That's a great question. That depends on the friendship, on the people involved. I will say, if it's a friendship in which, there's mutual respect, and the people involved in the friendship really care about each other, then oftentimes in the moment, there might be some awkwardness, or there might be some hurt feelings even. But, if it's somebody you trust, if it's a good friendship, friendships can bounce back from that happening. But sometimes if that comes up in a friendship and someone asks another friend to have sex and the person says no, then it can cause a friendship to change or end. And that can be a really hard thing to deal with. And then, kind of trying to, if that happens to you, reminding yourself, that there are other people out there, people that can be involved in a healthy relationship with me, and kind of moving on and looking for other friendships, if that's possible. But it can really hurt when that happens, when friendships change, when there's a romantic element that's introduced. That's a really good question. Someone has said administrator. When we were talking about cyber stalking, who can you contact? The administrator. So thank you so much to that participant who shared that. You're right, administrator. That sounds like the right person to contact. Someone asked, what about if it's just in the moment? Meaning if this is someone that you don't want to engage in an activity in the moment, but you may want to engage in a sexual activity at another time or further deeper on in the relationship. I think that's what am I interpreting that question correctly? Person who asked, what about if it's just in the moment? Yes. Okay. So if that happens, advocating for yourself, and also I recognize it's a little after 3:30, so if people need to hop off, that's totally fine. But I'll stay. I can stay a couple of extra minutes if people have questions or need anything. So if that happens in the moment and you want to keep the relationship going, it can be helpful to, say no, not right now. So that was one of the ways that we talked about how to say no, and then saying, I'm not comfortable with that activity right now, and I may be open to it in the future. And then you can even say something afterwards, like, I really value our relationship and I look forward to continuing to get closer to you. So you can sort of let the other person know that you still care about them, you're still interested in the relationship, but that you're not wanting to do that activity right now. So that's what I would recommend. Is it okay to leave a date that just feels bad? Yes. If a date feels bad, if the person you're with feels like they're pressuring you, you can absolutely leave that date. And it can feel a little awkward or uncomfortable, and you might even be concerned about hurting the other person's feelings. But your personal safety is more important than the other person's feelings. They will get over it, they will move on, but you can't take back your safety if you have been made unsafe. So that's kind of, looks like I've mostly rapid fire answered some of the questions here in this chat. Anything else people want to share, or any questions that people have?
Oh, yes, we will be sending out a recording of this training.
Is it okay if having sex with multiple partners but not letting them know? That's a great question. So it is, it's not illegal to not let them know. However, it might be we talked about signs of healthy relationships and signs of unhealthy relationships, and that one of those signs is being honest and trusting. And so if you are having sex with multiple partners, it is a sign of honesty and a sign of being a healthy and positive partner to let all of the partners you're with know that you are having sex with other people. And there are people who have multiple relationships simultaneously, and that's often called consensual non-monogamy. Because all of the partners involved in those relationships are consenting to the fact that you or the other person is with multiple other people. So it's not, I think it's important to let all of the people know that you're involved with, to let them know that you are involved with multiple people. And I think that's important, not just for relationship reasons of, wanting to have healthy relationships with your partners, but also for safety reasons. If you are having sex with someone and that person has a sexually transmitted infection, it's important to be able to communicate with your other partners, and so that they're aware that they're aware of kind of what's happening in terms of sexual health. So that's another piece that I think is important about that.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Bruce, looks like we've run out of questions, and we're so grateful for this outstanding presentation. It was really great. And as I put in the chat, we're going to send out the deck as well as the recording of this. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Bruce, and thank you all so much for being here. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all so much for coming.